Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here back in with another video, and this is going to be the LEGO Star Wars MOC Showcase episode 12. This is the series I've created to highlight some of the best MOCs I've come across on the internet. If you find yourself impressed by any of the MOCs in this video, all I ask is that you go to the links in the description and support the builders by giving them a like, comment, or even a follow. Now this is pod racing. First MOC we're going to take a look at today is a Podrace MOC by a builder by the name of ToyCrazy. I really included this MOC in this video just because of the rock formations. Like, obviously there's the two Lego set pod racers racing through it, so not too much to talk about there, but I think the landscape is really what's worth talking about. I think that some of the rock formations that we see in the pod race aren't exactly easy to build in Lego. They aren't the most straightforward thing to do, but I really like what this builder particularly has done with the they're basically snot builds. They're not really building straight up. All the rock formations are kind of layered with slopes and pieces like that really just go straight up in various shapes, and I think I like it quite a bit. As someone who has watched the pod race scene probably more than any sequence in Star Wars, I know a lot of what this should look like, and I think the builder really did a good job at replicating it. One of my favorite parts of this MOC is that rock formation, specifically like at the very top left corner. I think it just looks very natural. I like the technique, and if I was doing a pod race MOC, which as most of you know, I certainly plan on doing it at some point, I would definitely take a lot of design cues from this. I think I would probably want to build these rock formations in dark tan. I think that the brown may contrast a little bit too much with the tan, but the builds themselves I think are actually really, really nice. I also like what the builder tried to attempt at the bottom right hand corner, using those slope pieces kind of built into the plates around it. I think that sand can be a very tricky thing to make look, I guess, different. I mean, a lot of people can just like throw a bunch of tan plates on the ground and boom, call it sand, but I like it when people kind of experiment with stuff like this and try to integrate maybe some smoother sections than others. So I think that that's an interesting technique right there. I don't really have too much else to say about this MOC other than that I really like the rock formations, and I need to build my pod race MOC at some point. Next up, we're going to take a look at a Sullust MOC by Big Brick Studios, and this thing is just so cool. One of the first things that stuck out to me is just the mountain builds that the base is actually sitting in. A lot of people always ask, do you have any tips for building mountains or rock formations in Lego? And for the purposes of something like this, it really is just get a bunch of slopes and just build up. It doesn't have to have any particular pattern or look any particular type of way. Rock formations are cool in that when you build them, it really is just a random grouping of slopes. And I mean, you want to have a little bit of a flow to it, but it's not something you have to think about too deeply. So I like this. It looks pretty cool. It always draws my attention. And the other thing that really stuck out to me about this MOC is just simply the base build. I think that over to the right, the fact that there's that like half circle snot landing platform looks really cool. Below it, you can see the wall is curving around, which, I mean, it's just always a pleasant thing to look at in Lego whenever people aren't building in squares, but having their MOCs look a little bit more dynamic with certain angles, that's always going to give it some brownie points in my eyes. And I think the base itself just looks really cool. Like, it clearly has its own type of aesthetic and, I don't know, just design. And I can appreciate that. This doesn't really look like anything we've seen before in Star Wars, but it fits right into what we'd expect Star Wars to look like. So I always give builders a lot of credit when it comes to using their own imagination, but still having it be consistent with the Star Wars aesthetic. If we look over at the top left corner, you can see we have a platform with a stormtrooper on a turret. Turrets are pretty cool. And I like the line designs that are built into the ground. Building like a rectangle or a square or something like that in Lego is not straightforward, especially if you want to keep like the thickness of the lines consistent. So that actually looks really smooth the way he's done it. So I like that a lot. And I think the cargo / machinery over at the top left corner looks really cool and unique too. Once again, something I haven't ever seen in Star Wars, but still fits right in with the aesthetic. We move on to that platform on the very bottom, like the ground level. You can see we have a little encounter between some rebels and some stormtroopers. I'm a little disappointed that he's using the rebel stormtroopers in this MOC, just because, I mean, I really don't care for those figures at all. But because of the build, I'm willing to overlook it. And I think that the landscape overall just looks really good as well. I think that using those 1x1 red tiles, I don't know, and also incorporating the slopes into the ground, I think made it look really nice as well. I think Sullust is just a very unique looking area in Star Wars, so I like seeing it recreated in Lego. If we move on to the next picture, we get a look at a turret build that looks actually pretty good. Once again, I feel like I'm gonna be saying this a lot for this mock, but this turret is not something that we've seen exactly in Star Wars, but it looks right in line with what we'd expect the Empire to have. Got our Rebel Trooper hiding out behind it, and I think minifigure placement is always an important part to a mock, and I think that the builder actually has some really nice minifig placement in this mock. Moving on to the final picture, we get a better look at the platform over to the right side of the mock, and just being able to look at it from this angle and really appreciate the details. I'm just such a big fan of the techniques he used in this mock. Like just the architecture of the base is really, really good. Like, man, this thing looks incredible. I can't say enough. Just, I don't know, like the details he has in the windows over to the left side, and kind of the pattern he's generated for the walls, and there's like spotlights on it as well. It all looks really nice. I'm a big fan of the way he has constructed this mock. I also like that build over to the right. I mean, it looks like a moisture evaporator. I would imagine it's not because it's here on Sullust, but it looks like Star Wars. I like it. Enough said about that. All in all, this is just a wonderful, wonderful mock. I love when people can take locations we don't really see too often and kind of build on that and give us a mock that just looks really, really nice. In this next mock, we see a Special Forces group of clone troopers. This was built by BrickEvil, and the thing that really just drew my attention with this mock is that snot build on the ground, and specifically the Arabish that he put in the ground. Like, holy crap, is that incredible. I could not really be bothered to actually go look up what this might actually translate to, so if anyone in the chat is fluent with Arabish, definitely let me know. I'd love to know what that actually reads, and if it's a swear word, then I guess I just goofed. Please don't demonetize my video, YouTube. But outside of that, I like the jetpack kind of builds that he has on the clone troopers. It looks like they're actually heading like out of this, presumably like a hangar or something that they're in, and then jumping out into deep space, which, I mean, I like it. Some people have a problem with Star Wars characters being in space. Me, not so much. But yeah, they have these cool suits that I think the builds on the back of them look pretty sweet. And there's some other really cool things that are kind of scattered around this mock. I always love it when people use the bottom parts of those lever pieces. You can see towards the left side of the mock, right against the wall, and they kind of slide a window in there to create really like a hollow screen. And also, I think that the technique used for like the outer space aesthetic with the stars actually looks really cool, using those like headlight bricks with some white bar pieces stuck in them. I always like it when people do that, so nice job there. I think the wall has some pretty nice greebling as well. Wall greebling is something you really don't want to get too carried away with. You want to just develop a rather simple but detailed looking pattern that you can replicate, and there's not really too much going on the wall, so I like it when people can show that kind of restraint in their builds. Going back to the bottom where that Arabish is written, I really just adore it when people can really step up the bar when it comes to like building certain techniques into a ground. Like, for example, when I did the circular pattern in my Vardos landing platform, it was relatively straightforward. Like there was a little bit of a technique in trying to basically have like different sections of the circle be built out in different ways, but I definitely didn't attempt anything this ambitious. So whenever people can even think to try something like this, and when it actually looks nice in execution, I got to give them all the credit in the world. So shout out to the builders out there who are still pushing the bar and making nice designs like this one. All in all, that's really all I have to say for this mock, but I really like it. It's a nice little vignette. I love it when people can pack in even just the slightest new unique building technique in a relatively small building vignette. It just goes to show you guys, it's not really about the space you have. Any Lego build can be impressive or incredible, just depending on how much effort you're willing to put into it. Final mock we're going to take a look at today is a Millennium Falcon build by Marshal. Oh, Marshal, you've done it again, man. I know we talked about the Falcon last week with Lego Clone 1, 2, 3, but Marshal decided to break the YouTube, Lego, internet by dropping this masterpiece. So I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it. So obviously I have a pretty big history with Marshall Bananas builds. The Millennium Falcon that I built actually uses his exterior, and I kind of retrofitted it around and made some modifications to include a full interior to the MOC. But Marshall has come back once again. He's made tons of updates all over the MOC. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. First thing I noticed is, of course, he's using the new Falcon cockpit, which means that you needed a new design for the tunnel that kind of leads up to it. And I think it's very like what Lego did with it. I think he has a bit more details in it. I love, this is actually something he did for the first version of this MOC, but I love the use of the like bar pieces going down the middle of the cockpit tunnel at the very top, but also like the droid arms kind of going off on either side of it. And he even included some like 1x1 tiles to connect to them to make for some really nice looking greebling. One of the other cool things I noticed about this version of the MOC is actually on the front mandibles. Initially he was using just like wedge plates to kind of recreate the top layers that the greebling is kind of sandwiched in between, but here he actually, it looks like he used slopes behind them, and there's actually this like build that's kind of like, it sits in there and it's at an angle, and he uses those wall element pieces to actually have the little fin areas that stick out. Gives the mandibles a little bit more depth that I really like. And I mean, there's just so much awesome greebling in this thing. I think one of the most defining characteristics about the Falcon is just all the greebling that is all over the ship, and it's just so pretty to look at. I will never get tired of analyzing Millennium Falcon MOCs because builders just come up with some of the coolest techniques for greebling. And of course, like, I haven't looked extensively into what the greebling should actually look like. I'm going to give the builders the benefit of the doubt and assume that they did that work themselves. I mean, when you have a model like this, I can only imagine he looked at tons of reference material, but I can just sit here and appreciate all the greebling that he did on this build. I think one of the best things about Marshal's Falcon builds in general, this one and the last one, are the use of flex tubes all throughout the thing. I mean, there are just tons of pipes going all over the real Millennium Falcon, and I think Marshall does a good job at replicating that in his build. I mean, I can just show you some quick like zoom ins of just various areas where there's like flex tubing used. And I mean, I think flex tubing in general is just a great technique for any builder to employ in their Lego MOCs. Like, it just adds so much to a MOC, especially on a build like the Millennium freaking Falcon. One of the other cool unique things about this build is actually like the corridor section. So this is something that I think previously was, there's not really a straightforward way to accomplish this build just because of the shape of like the corridors on the Falcon. Like, I don't know, there's just not really a piece or a certain group of pieces that lend themselves to be implemented very well. But I love what Marshall did here. He's using those light gray tread pieces, and then he has the it looks like 1x3 slopes kind of spaced one apart from each other, so you can get a little bit of that angle in there. And I don't know, like, that's just so freaking cool. When I first saw this, like, I was like, wow, like, that's a really unique way to approach this, and it's kind of the best of both worlds. Like, on my Falcon, I use slopes, so like I was able to very clearly get the angle that the corridor has to kind of come out at. Whereas like I had big gaps between them, and I think this is a really good compromise between not having large gaps in that corridor but still maintaining the sloping that goes around it. So that just looks really nice. I think there's also a really nice use of those quarter cylinder pieces that the corridor kind of ends up going to. And I mean, there's once again just tons of greebling inside of there. I love the use of those bucket handle pieces. That's like one of the best greebling pieces that Lego has released in recent history. So shout out to Lego for that. If we move on to the next picture, we get a really good look at the back of it, and the thing that really sticks out to me is just the build for those exhaust ports. Now, this is something I've seen people take various approaches to make happen in Lego, and I love Marshall's interpretation of it in this build, probably the most out of anything I've seen. I'm guessing that's like some sort of tire piece that's built into that inverted slope piece, and of course he has the grill tiles between them, and it just looks so good. Like, I've never seen really anything built like that, so it's very pleasing to my Lego eye, I might say. The other cool thing about Marshal's builds is the way he does the back build of the Falcon. I can't really explain it other than like those fins you see. If you look at the actual Falcon, there's this like section towards the back that kind of jets out around the hyperdrive, and there's just various colors within it, and I really love Marshall's interpretation of it and the way he's built it in Lego, mixing in those dark red like little fin pieces to go in there. I think looks really nice. And I don't know, I think my favorite part of Marshall's Falcon in general is just the back of it. Like, there is just so much greebling in that one general area. As much as I'd love to sit here and break it down and talk about all the various pieces he used in it, I'm just gonna let you guys sit here and enjoy it, because it really is just eye candy for Lego. Now, whenever I found out Marshall was gonna be doing this build, he mentioned that he was gonna include a full interior, and that really just excited me. As someone who has built a Falcon with a full interior, I know how difficult of a task that type of thing can be. So I really was interested in seeing how he would tackle it, and oh my god, Marshall, like, how is this even possible? So I mean, like, for one, it just looks so good. Like, the overall, the scheme of it, the colors he chose, it just looks so accurate. I especially like how he included the rooms towards the front of the Falcon. We don't actually ever even see those on screen. It looks like it's clearly just reserved for cargo, and it's really not even super obvious how they would access them in the films. But outside of that, I'm just glad he incorporated that. That's something that I still to this day have not incorporated into my Falcon, so hopefully I can do that someday. But this is the only thing his Falcon was lacking initially. The big problem with interiors and Falcons is simply the fact that the interior of the Falcon that we see on screen is physically too big to fit into like what an actual size Falcon would be. So whenever you build with Lego, you have to make compromises. So the compromise I had made with my Falcon specifically was that I had to make it a little bit thicker so I could have the full interior, have the figure standing up in it, and I'd be able to, like, you know, remove and put the panels back on it pretty seamlessly. Looks like the compromise he made here is that it doesn't look to me like you can stand minifigures up in it in any given area and actually have the panels still on it, which is obviously not ideal for me. But when you have a Falcon that looks this good from the outside, I can understand why the builder would want to make a compromise like that. And this thing is just absolutely incredible. Like, if Lego wanted to include an interior in their Falcon, I mean, which they did, if they wanted to do a full interior, I almost would prefer if they did it this way, where maybe you're not able to stand up figures everywhere, but if you do remove the panels, you can set up some of your favorite iconic scenes on the Millennium Falcon. If we move on to the next photo, we get a better look at the rear side of the interior of the Falcon. And this is actually based on the Return of the Jedi version of the Millennium Falcon. So you can see in that room that's right next to the hyperdrive room, there's those 3 beds there. Here's a little fun fact for you with Star Wars. I guess for the sequels, Leia insisted that Han add like a bathroom and a kitchen to the Millennium Falcon. So one of those beds actually got removed, and it is instead now a bathroom slash kitchen. So there you go. There's your Star Wars knowledge of the day. But all in all, this thing is just incredible. I could literally stare at this build all day long. But for the purposes of time, that's all I'm really gonna say about this MOC. But Marshall, you were just such a talented builder, and you really have outdone yourself again. This thing is just beyond words incredible. Millennium Falcon is the most iconic ship in all of Star Wars, and whenever builders can create something this incredible, I don't even know what to say other than just wonderful job, Marshall. Wonderful job. That's gonna finish up the video today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed checking out these amazing MOCs that these builders have come up with. If you like what you saw, all I ask is that you go to the links in the description, click on them, follow the builders, like their stuff, give them a comment, all that good stuff. Just show them some support. They certainly deserve it. And if you like what I do, go ahead, hit the like button on the video to support it, hit the subscribe button to support the channel, and I will be back again very soon.